Keeping things simple and sweet, we are creeping up to the NFL draft, so here are my top 5 quarterbacks in this year's 2023 NFL draft. Now, obviously, I'm not an NFL scout, but I have watched some film on all of these quarterbacks I'm going to be talking about, just my general impressions on these guys, doing a little bit of research on them as well, and just giving my general rough opinions on where I would maybe take these guys in the NFL draft and my general ranking on these guys creeping up to the NFL draft. So let's start things off with number 5. Number 5 out of 5 on my list, it's got to be quarterback Anthony Richardson out of Florida. He's a combine warrior. He's a physical specimen at 6'4", 244 pounds. He put up some stellar numbers at the NFL Combine, running a 4.4 40-yard dash, had the highest vertical jump of any quarterback at the NFL draft. He has some arm talent. He looks pretty good. Teams are considering taking this guy in the top 10, maybe top 5 overall NFL draft picks, but I just don't see it. I don't see quite what NFL teams are incredibly enamored by. I understand that the on paper and what he brings to the field generally is a very imposing physical athlete that can keep defenses guessing as far as his ability to run and his ability to, keep even linebackers honest as far as how people are going to approach tackling him. But I don't consider Anthony Richardson to be a top 3 NFL prospect going into this NFL draft. He played at the SEC, which is a high level of football as far as college football is concerned, but we look at the numbers, look at the statistics. He didn't even throw over 60% in any of the seasons he played at Florida, much less his season as a starter last year. And that's not inspiring to me. I mean, compared to his compatriots within this video, Anthony Richardson is the least accurate passer, the least consistent passer. Watching his tape, there were times where he was just putting the ball in places, even when hitting his receivers, that were uncomfortable and not ways that you would lead NFL caliber receivers into traffic or just down the field. Richardson has the big arm, he has the potential, but if I'm drafting Anthony Richardson, I need to have one of the best offensive quarterback coaches in the entire NFL, and arguably I think you need to be one of the best NFL play callers that is putting him in the best possible situation. He's not a day 1 start for me, maybe not even a year 2 start for me, depending on your situation. In his first years, you could very well see him being like this gadget player who can come in on a couple of interesting downs and maybe make some plays for you coming out of the backfield. I'm not calling him a running back, but I just don't see I don't see it in the numbers. I don't see it on the tape. He's just not a very consistent passer, not a terribly accurate passer. I see all the physical gifts there. I see the potential there. But what you're drafting when you get Anthony Richardson is a high amount of potential, but you need to have the right people to bring it out of him. I just don't know that anybody picking in the top 5 is going to have the right coaching staff and the right personnel around him to really make this guy shine. I think we're kind of riding the potential wave of maybe a Jalen Hurts performing incredibly well last year, and all due respect to Jalen Hurts, but Anthony Richardson, in my eyes, just doesn't scream Jalen Hurts to me. I mean, if he surprises people, I'd be happy for him. I'm not going to be rooting against Anthony Richardson, but I just don't quite see him being a top 5 pick. Personally, I don't know that I would want to take him in round 1. Moving on to number 4, let's talk Will Levis from Kentucky. Another big and physical, imposing quarterback coming out of the SEC, standing at 6'4", 229 pounds. Will Levis does also bring some versatility, his ability to run against opponents and his ability to still pass against his opponents, but he takes a lot of risks for me. I know last year the numbers and a lot of Will Levis stands, so to speak, talking about, he was playing hurt last year, he was playing relatively under duress, and things just weren't great. Obviously, Kentucky's not necessarily a powerhouse in the SEC or in college football, so the environment's a little bit different, but even with that being said, Will Levis turned the ball over quite a lot over the last couple of seasons at Kentucky. He's a big physical guy. I mean, he looks great on tape. I mean, or not on tape, excuse me, at the combine when he's throwing in shorts. But when push came to shove, watching his tape against Georgia most recently, putting the ball in a lot of places that I just didn't like, putting himself in and putting Kentucky in positions really lose and turn the ball over quite a bit. He's another guy that just decision-making wise, I just don't see it. He has a lot of turnovers on his tape. I don't think that instantly gets better as soon as you hit the NFL level. I think Will Levis is another guy that could very well need some time to cook and develop. I just wouldn't, again, maybe like a high potential there. You have the physical traits and you're coming out of the SEC, but you didn't necessarily wow anybody in the SEC. You weren't putting up incredibly prolific numbers out of Kentucky, and I just don't quite see it on the tape. Again, he has a beautiful arm, and he can throw the ball with the best of them in shorts, but when push comes to shove and you're playing at the NFL stage, and you're playing against in windows that are smaller, and you're playing against athletes that are better, you're playing amongst the best of the best every single Sunday, are those decisions going to be there that are going to elevate your team over the top? I'm not starting Will Levis year one. I think he's a guy that you need to sit and cook with. I think he needs time to develop if he's going to become a true NFL passer. I think the potential may be there for maybe like more longevity than maybe Anthony Richardson just generally, but both these guys play with a lot of versatility. Levis will run and not necessarily much of a slider as well. Again, just the limited tape that I saw, but he's not the best quarterback in this class. I don't really see it as much, and that's why he kind of sits at my number 4. Levis has some potential there. You can kind of see it, but very much so like a Zach Wilson. We're getting a lot of comparisons to Zach Wilson, where looks great in shorts, but when push comes to shove on the field, he's throwing less than 60% completion percentage at the NFL level. And you draft for the potential, you need to have the right guys backing that potential. Will Levis, another case of, I think he needs to go to the right place and be with the right coaches, with the right coordinators, with the right, everything, for things to blow up and explode and be great. He could spend some time in the NFL. I think he has a potential career in the NFL, but I just don't see him being an instant franchise quarterback from day one. Number 3, it's actually Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee. I really like Hendon Hooker. Outside of what you've seen out of guys like Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, Hendon Hooker is a very accurate passer, does not make a lot of bad decisions, and brings a lot to the table as far as your future NFL rookie. I think even Hendon Hooker right now, you can plug him into an NFL offense. He could be, at the very least, he's going to be a very solid NFL backup. Coming out of Tennessee, they have a very interesting system, but another SEC quarterback. Played some time, obviously, with Virginia Tech, with the Hokies, and things didn't really pan out there. The couple of knocks that I have for Hendon Hooker, obviously, the injury concern. Coming off of that ACL, that's going to be a big deal, and as well as being 25 years old, walking into his first NFL season. So looking at the systems he's played in and the environments that he's been in, he's obviously benefited tremendously in his time at Tennessee. I like what I see on the tape with Hendon Hooker. Again, very accurate, great decision making, and another thing, stands incredibly poised in the pocket. Playing against Alabama last year, had one of the best performances of the college football season, honestly, putting up some terrific numbers, was just unfazed by Alabama's pass rush, was delivering the ball down the field with some great timing. A little bit of sway here and there as far as ball placement, but what Hendon Hooker, brings to the tape here, I think starting his rookie year is an easy backup for sure. Maybe a little bit of time to cook to get him prepared for the NFL level, as there's just a general system change and a culture change from college to the NFL level. But I like a lot of what I've seen on the tape from Hendon Hooker. I think he has a bright future ahead of him at the NFL level. I don't know that he's a day one starter immediately, but he absolutely is going to bring some quality to your roster, even in a backup role. Eventual starter maybe down the road, and I think is going to be a very solid day 2 pick. The reason being, again, age and that lingering injury. I just think there's a lot of trepidation surrounding Hooker. If he goes to a team like the Minnesota Vikings, I think he could very well end up being a starter, maybe following in Kirk Cousins' footsteps, so to speak. I think Hendon Hooker has a very bright future in the NFL level. Now, this is where things get tricky. Number 2 and number 1, right? You got CJ Stroud and you got Bryce Young. Which one do you pick to go at 2? Which one do you favorite the most? I think these guys are actually incredibly close. If you have one or the other ahead of the other, I think there's fair arguments to be had for either, but I'm going to go with CJ Stroud at number 2. And I think the biggest factors that make him the number 2 overall versus Bryce Young being the number 1 overall are a couple things. I think there are moments where Bryce Young display some decision making that is a little less than NFL ready. Looking at that game against Georgia, though, putting up some terrific numbers. However, one of the biggest plays in that Georgia game, him leading, unfortunately, on a throwaway, leading his receiver into danger and knocking his receiver out. I think it was Marvin Harrison Jr., one of the best receivers in college football for certain, going into the NFL draft next year. But C.J. Stroud's also played with a lot of great NFL-level talent. Paris Johnson this year, Luke Weipler on the offensive line. You've also had Jackson Smith and Jigba in this year's NFL draft, who could very well be a top 10 pick. Last year, 2 first-round picks, Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. There's been a lot of talent on this Ohio State roster around C.J. Stroud that goes to his benefit and his ability to exemplify just how good these talented guys are and utilizing them. Terrific completion percentage overall through his 2 seasons, and was able to elevate Ohio State almost to the national championship. I like a lot of what C.J. Stroud is going to bring to the NFL. He could very well be a day 1 starter, whether he goes to Carolina or whether he goes to Houston. His ability to also break out of the pocket was on display in that game against Georgia to extend the play, but also pick up first downs, crucial yardage with his legs. So allowing him to escape the pocket might actually be a good thing for one of these higher draft pick teams who typically don't have the best offensive lines to start your career with. But put him around some good weapons, put him around a good offensive coordinator. I think he's going to develop into a very solid, at the least, NFL quarterback. Certainly a starter. I think whether he's in Carolina or whether he's in Houston, he should absolutely be the day 1 starter. And I have high hopes for C.J. Stroud. I think he's going to be very good. And honestly, I think he's going to benefit. I think with his size generally in comparison to Bryce Young, I think he's going to be able to handle the NFL level maybe a little bit quicker. But here's what I'm going to get to with pick number 1, Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young, what he brings to the table, with a very smooth transition by your boy, he's a very natural passer. Bryce Young, with the guys around him at Alabama, was competing for a national championship. When he has the blockers, when he has some pretty good receivers, this guy lights up the field, right? A Heisman winner and, again, national championship contender. In his time at Alabama, standing at a solid 5'11" and 204 pounds, literally built the exact same as me, but this guy can throw the ball as beautifully as I've seen among NFL level quarterbacks. I think Bryce Young fits very well at number 1. He's the best pure passer in this NFL draft for me. Throws an incredibly tight spiral, very decisive with the ball, is not going to put the ball in danger too much. He doesn't play a lot of hero ball, and he moves in the pocket with a lot of great poise. Doesn't necessarily just run for the sake of running. Loves to extend the play if necessary and also try to find his open receivers. The ability of Bryce Young, he just has a lot of NFL level polish, playing in a pro style system at Alabama. Obviously a lot of Alabama guys pro ready pretty much from day 1. I think Bryce Young is no exception. If he goes number 1 overall to the Carolina Panthers, my biggest hope for him is that the offensive line holds up really well, right? I mean, at the end of the day, number 1 overall pick, number 2 overall pick, offensive lines, like I just mentioned a little while ago, not necessarily the best from day 1. So Bryce Young standing at 5'11", 204 pounds is what he came in at the combine. Not necessarily 6'3", 6'4", not the most imposing stature, but NFL teams have developed playing well with guys that are not necessarily 6'3", right? We've seen Drew Brees, we've seen Kyler Murray, we've seen Baker Mayfield. I think Bryce Young is going to walk into the NFL level. If he ends up in Carolina with Frank Reich, I think they're going to develop him fantastically, get him a few more weapons. I think the Carolina Panthers have a bright future, but just like any other quarterback, durability is still going to be a general concern there. With his smaller stature, taking NFL hits, you want to do the best to keep his jersey clean. And I think that's the biggest, what if? Could he be more susceptible to getting injured? It's possible, but every quarterback has the potential of getting hurt every single Sunday. But what I think Bryce Young brings to a team day 1, he's an absolute starter. He could very well take over that offense. I think what he's going to bring to, whether it's the Texans, whether it's the Panthers, whether it's whoever, is a very solid day 1 NFL starting quarterback. And I'm honestly very excited to see who goes pick 1 and pick 2. But again, it's a small margin for me, but I pick Bryce Young as my number 1 among the quarterbacks list. So running it back one more time, Anthony Richardson at 5, Will Levis at 4, Hendon Hooker at 3, CJ Stroud at 2, barely, and then number 1, Bryce Young out of Alabama. So thanks so much for watching the video. Of course, feel free to stick around and watch some more content as we get closer to the NFL draft. Next week, my official 1-32 first-round NFL mock draft. And then the week after that, my videos usually come out on Thursdays. The NFL draft is on Thursdays. I think what I'm going to do is try to do a series of shorts to try to give you guys a very good approach, very up-to-the-moment approach. It probably won't be from this setup. You'll probably see me out and about, but I'm very excited, looking forward to the NFL draft, as I'm sure many of you are as well. So again, hit the like, comment, share, subscribe, and stick around and watch some more content on the channel. I really appreciate it. My name's Tristan Blake Rines. I'll catch you in the next one. Adios.